Hey gardeners, Amy here with Garden Up. Today I want to walk you through step-by-step instructions of how to overseed an existing lawn. So one thing I have definitely learned from all of my experiments over the last few years and trial and error is that there's a lot of different instructions on the internet and a lot of conflicting information on the internet, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. So I want to go step by step exactly what works, because to not do this correctly is costly in both money and time. So let's do it right the first time. To overseed an existing lawn means that you're leaving the grass that's already there and you're putting a new seed on top of it. Now mostly people do this with grass. They fill in the grass that's already there. Maybe it's patchy or it's getting thin or they want to try a new species or whatever, but they usually do it with grass. We do it with low water alternatives, so things like clover, yarrow, there's certain types of chamomile and little daisies and other little annual native wildflowers that work well in lawns. That's what we overseed with. I don't do anything with grass except tear it out, because that stuff's thirsty and I'm done with it. But there's several things that will get in the way of a successful overseeding project. The thicker and healthier that your existing grass is, the harder of a time your new seed will have at getting down through the grass and making contact with the soil. And it has to make good soil contact in order to germinate and grow and be successful. If it doesn't have contact with the soil, it's either not going to germinate at all, or if it does germinate, it's going to dry up and die. And we don't want either of those things to happen. So it has to have good soil contact. That is number one. So prep is vital. And prep takes the most time, and honestly it's the most expensive part of overseeding because it is labor intensive. So here's step by step what I do when we overseed a lawn. Step one, mow as low as you possibly can. Scalp the ground if your mower will go that low. You want to remove all of the leaf blades of the grass so that there's less obstacles for that seed to get down and make contact with the soil. You also want to either bag the leaves or rake them up. You need all of that grass actual material gone. And so again, this is a very labor intensive part if your lawnmower doesn't have a bag, and even if it does, because you still have to haul the bags, but you need all that grass gone and out of the way for the next several steps. Step two, mark your sprinkler heads. Make sure you know where your sprinklers are, otherwise you're going to have a lot of repairs later and you're not going to want to do that. So mark the heads with flags. You're going to have to turn the sprinklers on for a couple minutes in each zone so you can stick a flag over where each sprinkler is, and now you know where to avoid with the next step, which is power tools. Step three, raking. And the best way to rake is power raking. What I'm trying to do is remove the thatch and built up dead grass leaves and roots that are again on top of the soil, and they're creating a barrier between the seeds and soil contact. So you have to remove as much of that material as you can. And if you can get a power rake that goes even down into the soil and tears up the dirt itself, all the better. Get as much out and as deep as you can with that power rake to expose the most soil and give those seeds the best fighting chance that they can. Because here's the ironic thing. When you think of clover as a weed, you can't get rid of it. It grows everywhere. It's awful, right? But when you grow it on purpose, it just doesn't wanna. When you're trying to grow it on purpose, it just becomes this little drama seed that just does not want to germinate for you. The conditions are not right, I will die. So a quick little side note about the machines we're using. This is a Thatcher or a power rake. I rent all this equipment. And I rent from River Ridge Hardware, which is on Garland and Driscoll. They have really good machines, and from what I've found in town after years of calling, they have the best prices. So if you're in Spokane, look up River Ridge Hardware. It's a local hardware store that has an excellent rental center. Go there. If you're in another town, you're going to have to do your own research, sorry. So a Thatcher is literally just a rake with a motor on it. And basically what's going on underneath here, I'm not going to lift it too much, but maybe you can see under there, is there's these little tine things that spin around. And what they do is they pull up all the lawn and whatever you're trying to rake way more efficiently than you could ever do by hand. And the idea here is that you're removing the thatch, the whole thatch layer from the lawn so that you can uncover the soil. Because there's soil down there, but it's underneath all of that dead grass and roots. And that's what we have to get through. As far as how to use this machine, make sure to get instructions from your rental center because every single one is going to be different. But the gist of it is make sure the tank is full of gas, turn the switch to on. There might be a choke or a primer on yours, who knows, and then pull the cord. It's just like starting a lawnmower. And then you pull up the bale to make it spin the tines and start moving forward. Step 4 is aerating. This one is kind of optional, but I highly recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it, honestly. And the experiments that I did beside my house, this was the only way I actually had success with my germination and success rate was by aerating. So what aerating does is it physically pulls up plugs of the thatch and soil. It allows water and air to get down into the soil, and it also creates these lovely little pockets, these little bowls for the seeds to fall into. And when the seeds fall in there, they make good soil contact. They get water, they get air, they do get enough light to get going, and then they will germinate, and those ones will survive. The ones that land on top of whatever thatch is still there still may not have a good fighting chance. The other thing aerating does is it loosens the soil itself, especially if you've had this established lawn for a long time and you play on it and you use it. Every time you step on it, it compacts the soil a little bit. And the more it compacts, the less that soil can hold things like water and air, and less space there is for roots to get in there and grow. So aerating is a good idea. It does, if you're trying to avoid having volunteer things in your grass, it does create holes for weed seeds to fall into. But in this case, we want those holes for the seeds to fall into because they're no longer weeds. Now we want them growing. It works the same as the Thatcher. You make sure that on switches to on. Some of them might have a primer plug or something, who knows, and then you pull the cord. This has a few more knobs and things though. When you pull the bale on this, it actually lifts the whole machine up so that you can move it without having the plugs touching the ground. This is so you can like go over a sidewalk or something without damaging the concrete, or if you've already done a section and you just don't want to do it again, whatever. When you drop the bale, it drops the machine. And now the plugs are in the ground and they're getting ready to pull up these little plugs of soil. So let me lift this up a bit so you can see underneath what's going on here. These go into the ground and pull up the dirt.
There we go.
So there's a piece right there, and that's what it pulls out. I've got some soil there. There's soil. And these plugs have some soil. But yeah, this is the grass. This is the thatch layer. All of this is between the seeds and the soil. All that needs to come out. Let's see if I can find another one here. Step 5. All your prep work is now done. It's now time to seed. So you'll need to buy enough seed to cover your area, which means you're going to need to measure and do some math. Talk to the seed company, make sure you understand how much to put down. You're probably going to want some kind of a broadcast spreader. I have a little tiny here. What is it? This very bad one. But one of those big push ones is probably a good idea, especially if you go on this size. In fact, I probably will invest in one before the end of this project. And then you'll want to make sure it's set correctly and that you understand how that broadcaster works. You do not want to lay down too much seed because then you'll be too thick on one end of the yard and then run out before you're done. Do half of an application in one direction and then the other half perpendicular. And then if there's any seed left, you can just kind of do some circles or dance or whatever to finish up the rest of the seed, so you use everything and you get good coverage on the whole lawn. Lastly, if the seed is really tiny, you might want to dilute it a little bit with some kind of an extra inert matter like sand or a really dry soil or something that won't clog up that spreader. But that does tend to help it go a little farther, especially if you're worried about overseeding one particular area. After you finish seeding, you want to go back over it with a rake upside down, and that'll actually help the seed get past that lawn and down into the soil. Next, it is a good idea to top dress with some kind of compost or topsoil, some kind of soil. This ensures that that seed makes contact with dirt. That way, and it's covered up so it's protected from birds, it'll get contact with moisture. It's a good thing. It's an extra step, but it helps a lot. And lastly, and another vitally important step, is watering. You have to water, and you have to water correctly. And when I've tried this in my own yard, this is where I always go wrong, because I don't have an irrigation system with a timer. So I have to rely on my own memory to remember to turn that thing on 2 to 3 times a day for 10 minutes. My memory is a crapshoot at best. I have too much other stuff going on in my head to remember that. So I often forget, and that's why my clover lawns haven't taken off yet. So this year I've invested in a multiple output timer that I can just screw on to the faucet on the outside of my house, and I'll be using that to germinate and grow one section of yard at a time. So that's what I recommend. How to water is frequent but short intervals. When you're trying to germinate seed, you want to water for maybe 5 to 10 minutes for 2 to 3 times a day. And what that does is it keeps that surface layer moist so that the seeds have a good environment to germinate in and they don't dry out. But you don't need to waste extra water by watering down farther. There's no roots down there that you're trying to grow yet. Once the seeds germinate and then put on their first set of true leaves, that's when you want to start decreasing frequency but increasing duration. So then you'll go down to 1 to 2 times a day for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then eventually down to 1 time a day for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. That teaches the roots to grow deep, to seek out that water. It gets the water down, percolating down into the soil, and the roots will start chasing it. And as time goes on and as the summer gets hotter, you're going to decrease frequency even more until with these seeds, you should only have to water once every week, maybe every 2 weeks. That's the point of this, is to save a butt ton of water so that we're being better stewards for our environment and we use our water more wisely. Certain seed species do need to be mowed, some do not. Microclover only needs to be mowed a couple times a year. Things like Dutch clover and yarrow, in this case, do need to be mowed regularly. I'd say once every week or 2 is probably sufficient. They don't need to be mowed as often as grass does, but you're gonna mow every week or 2 anyway for your lawn. So just keep that same schedule and you'll be just fine. That's everything I've got for you today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, remember to leave them in the comments below. If you liked the video, remember to tell me by hitting the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do that. You'll get more content on gardening in your video feed every week. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the garden.